Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. We're going to go over the basics of macros. What is macros? We're not going to do any kind of calculating or anything because we're not qualified for that. We've already told you that. But we've been doing this for a while. And so while I feel like I have imposter syndrome talking to this point because I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian, we have been doing this for over 3 years. And so we have the experience from a normal person who's not a science-based background kind of, to try to explain some of the ins and outs that gets people caught up on it. A little bit about me though, real fast, is 20 years ago when I first started college, I started out taking nutrition classes. And so I have to remember that a lot of people don't have the basic nutrition 101 knowledge that I do. And so I tend to go down scientific rabbit holes when it comes to macro counting. And so if Robert steps in or explains something, he's not mansplaining. He's simply simplifying it because I tend to confuse more than help. Right. And so you are a much better teacher than I am.
Right. And there are some key notes that we are trying to make sure that we follow to keep this simplified. It's important to know that when you talk about macros have many, many variables based upon the individual, their circumstances, their health condition, and most importantly, what their goals are. So we can't just assume that macros for weight loss or macros for fitness are what we're trying to disclose. We're trying to say that you're unique, your journey is going to be unique, and we're just trying to help lay the foundational elements that you need in order for you to take and be successful. So there are the same question. Well, let me say the same question we get asked all the time is, how do I even get my macros? Where do I get my macro numbers at? Well, we're not here to take and give you a definitive direction. You can go to the interwebs, do a search online, and you can find 1,001 different places that have macro calculators. They're really easy. You go in there, you answer a series of questions, being authentic about your job, your workouts, things of that nature, and it spits out what your macros are going to be.
It's very individualized.
Yeah, and then that's where you get to take and have this basic social experiment where you get to take and figure out, are these macros working for me, or should I increase protein or decrease carbs or whatever that looks like? So that will be something that's fun, it's exciting, and it's a social experiment on yourself.
So, but what are macros, right? Yeah. So macros are short for macronutrients, which are proteins, carbs, and fats. So let's, I guess, talk about what macros are.
Yeah, but let's understand that we're starting at the very foundational level, right? So we're not going to go deep dive in this, as we said at the beginning. So when you think about macros, before Jen gets into exactly what macros are, I want you to think of a concept of having 3 separate bank accounts to pay your bills, right? You have the personal account, you have your household bill account, and then you have your savings account, or if that's the way you want to look at it. Each bank account is reserved for a certain amount of money that you're trying to put away. And that is no different than when we're counting macros. You're going to have a certain set of macros for your proteins, for your carbs, and for your fats. And so all those together equal what your total balance is that you can be eating to. But just think about it that way, and that helps you understand a little bit better about where calories come from when we talk about the macronutrient counting.
So when he says balance, he says calories. So what are calories? Calories are simply a unit of energy, and energy in, energy out. You know, that old saying, calories in, calories out, energy in, energy out, same thing, same concept. And so when we think about a unit of energy and how that relates to macros, again, we have the protein, the carbs, and the fats. So the protein and the carbs are 4 calories each, or 4 unit of energy each, whereas fat is 9 calories each. So when they say that, you know, that what is that old saying? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now.
I'm not sure what you're going for.
Where, you want to lose fat and your body goes to fat first. It doesn't, because it takes twice as much energy, a little more than twice as much energy, to burn 1 unit of energy or 1 gram of fat than it does a carb or a protein.
Yeah, I'm going to back up a little bit because I think that we missed a key part there.
Oh.
And so when we're talking about proteins, carbs, and fats, right, we're using grams. So 1 gram of each of those macronutrients has a different value that equates to calories.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 gram of protein or 1 gram of carb equal 4 calories, where 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. So to Jen's point, you could have twice as much protein and carbs as you can fat within your calorie intake. But so that's really when you look at how am I prioritizing. Mm-hmm. If you're saying I want to prioritize muscle to keep my muscle while you're losing weight, mm-hmm. well, there's one thing in that macronutrients that feeds your muscles. That's protein. Mm-hmm. Right? Carbs and fats still have their place, as we've talked about, mm-hmm. but again, you're going to have to take and manage this journey on your own based upon the goals that you set for yourself.
Yeah. But real life, okay, taking it back to macros and how do you actually count macros? There's 2 things that you need to buy, which is a food scale. Any simple food scale will work. That's just one that we have. And measuring cups for liquids, because you can weigh water, you can weigh liquids, but water is the only thing on the scale that's 100% accurate.
The last thing that you're going to need is some way to track. Mm-hmm. So you can use an app. We personally use MyFitnessPal because mm-hmm. we're technology savvy, but you just may just need a
pen and paper or
right?
food journal or something.
Right. So all these are accountability tools, mm-hmm. right? You have to understand exactly what is going into your body so that you can determine what needs to come out of your body. Mm-hmm. Now, I say this because I think it's very important. I think it's a great point to say. When you're talking about stored energy, Jen talked about eating energy and how calories in, calories out. Mm-hmm. So if you just think about this in simplest of terms, what happens when you run out of storage, right? Your body creates more. So if you're putting the calories in, but you're not taking the calories out through some kind of activity or movement, then your body is just going to keep storing that. And then as it stores, your waistline gets bigger, your stomach or your face, or your legs, because your body just says, I'm going to put it wherever I want to put it at. Some of us carry it in our torso. Some of us carry it in our legs. At the end of the day, it's just like buying more stuff for your house, your apartment, or your car. The more you stack in, the less room there is. When it needs to make room, it's going to make room by expanding. So in order to take and get skinnier or to get fitter or to lose that girth or size, is you have to expel the energy away from fat to shrink down your storage space.
And we're not talking about fat macros. We're talking about the fat cells in your body.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought it was self-explanatory. My apologies.
So taking a real life example, I'm actually excited to present this because I started my bodybuilding competition. So coach, if you see this, I'm sorry.
Her prep.
My prep. So a real life example, something that caught me up when I first started macro counting was looking at a nutritional label, which I'll show to the camera, but we're going to have a little in-screen one, is you can see it there, and then we'll show it. If you look at the label, it shows a serving size is 1 roll or 71 grams. This is what messed me up in the beginning and why I was so confused with macro counting is I thought the 71 grams, the serving size, correlated to the macros. It's not. That's the weight. Once I realized that, I was like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. What you're looking for on the macros is underneath, everything under here. So you look at the fat, the total fat, which is 2 grams, and the total carbs of 37 grams, and the protein of 6 grams. There's your macros for 1 roll or 71 grams in weight.
Right.
We're going to do a real life example, and we're actually going to weigh one of these puppies because, I mean, if you're being really particular and you're like tracking down to the gram, this is what you're supposed to do. Personally, I didn't do it until I started bodybuilding prep. sorry for the background noise of the plastic here, because I just wasn't that particular. But some people are, and if you are, that's great. All right, let me turn this on real quick.
Let me see the roll real quick, please.
Okay.
So
there you go.
This roll right here, right? It is just a hoagie roll. Jen loves them. Now, again, that package says that a serving size, aka one roll, it should be 200 calories or 71 grams, right? It doesn't tell you just on the serving size or the total calories, which I think where most people just eyes automatically go, and they think that's what they're going to calculate against. You have to take and be able to track your macros. And there are a lot of macro tracking apps that are out there. But there's also a lot of apps out there that if you're going to use an app that simply only track calories, and it's not as convenient. I'll give you an example from our particular situation, MyFitnessPal. Great app. I love it. It's easy to use because we've been using it for 3 years. But they don't allow you to count macros unless you're actually using the premium version, which costs you about $100 a year. Yeah. So I want you to keep that in mind. Whatever tool you decide, whether it's an app or pen and paper, you want to count via macros, not simply via calories.
Right. Okay. So it says one serving is 71 grams. Let me make sure this is on grams down here because there's different unit of measurements. I hit TAR button, which for those that don't know, which I didn't realize till probably 6 months in, TAR just means reset. Like
zero it out.
Yeah. So it's showing it weighs 68 grams when a serving size is 71 grams, which that doesn't seem like a whole lot of difference. But if you're really counting your macros down, you count down to the gram. So that's why you weigh packaged food, because packaged food, there's human error. Right. You can have more, you can have less in a package. I mean, look at those bag of chips, y'all. Come on.
Yeah. So the basics that we're trying to get, we've made notes here, but the key points in this is that A, you need to weigh your food. 2, determine how you're going to take and track, whether it be an app or whether you're going to do it via pen and paper. Just figure out a way and stay consistent.
A huge tip that I tell everyone, and now that you tell everyone, when you're first starting out macro counting, don't change anything. Like I always say, accountability first. So like keep whatever you're eating normally, but just start weighing it. So that way you're like, you can be accountable for how much you are actually eating. And then that's like a realization of, oh my gosh, I was eating, X number of calories when I should be eating X.
In order for us to understand exactly what calories should I be taking in versus what calories are coming out, I have to have metrics. I have to have a baseline. And so there's where the accountability when you first start comes in at is, how do you know how much energy you're putting in your body through food intake, unless you're tracking it, as well as how do you know how much energy you're taking out of your body through your movement activity, unless you have something to track it.
So another tip along with that is if you're tracking on a weekly basis, let's say Monday to Sunday, and you're doing good Monday through Friday, everything's great, but then you don't track on the weekends and you splurge a little, whether have fun with the friends or you eat a whole pizza to yourself, which we used to do, no shame there. Right. That can really mess up your progress, whether take 2 steps forward for 1 step back, or it just, you don't lose any weight or you don't gain any weight. And there's a really cool graphic I found on the interweb that we'll put right here that shows exactly what I'm trying to tell you. So it's a great visualization of, that wasn't even a word there.
We're going to make it one. We're going to make it
one. Of showing, accountability at the end of the day. And it's not about splurging all the time, but, in moderation. It's not about a cheat day, but a cheat meal, as you always say.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of bro science that it's out there. When I say bro science, it's people like to act as if they're experts, and some of them are, right? But there's so many that are not. How do you differentiate, right? One polished speaker could be just as polished as somebody who is not and is more of a just looking to influence or looking to take and make it sound like they know what they're talking about. I'm not here to side the way. What I'm telling you is that all we're saying is that you have to find balance. You have to have accountability tools put in place in order for you to go onto this journey and be successful at it. And you Again, there are no cheat days. They're cheat meals. And when I say a cheat meal, it means that you have already know that a meal's coming up or an unplanned meal that you better start putting into pre-planning your food intake so that you can, if you know what's going to happen on Friday because there's a special event, maybe you reduce some of your calorie intake Monday through Thursday so that Friday you can kind of feel as though you're free to eat whatever you want.
And that's simply how we did it.
Yeah.
You know, like all we can speak to or speak from is our experience. And what works for us isn't going to work for everyone. So all we can do is offer you what worked, you know, helped us along the way.
Yeah. As I always say, it's the great experiment, right? It's something that you're going to have to take and learn and grow as you go through your journey. I do want to make note here that what I feel and what we've seen and heard from other people who have sent us private messages or friends that we talk to, you know, the biggest killer of anybody's journey from week to week is either weekend grazing or grazing throughout the work week or alcohol on the weekends. So be mindful. When we talk about counting macros, there's one thing to understand and one thing that I think is paramount above all. This is not a diet, right? Diet's still restrictive. It's why we don't say diet, we say food management. Because if I'm taking it from my perspective, I love sweets. I'm a sugarholic. So my macros are 99.9% on point week in, week out, which is where I've found all my success in weight loss. But I have not given up any food that I love. If I want pizza, I eat pizza. If I want a 1,200
except now
1,200 calorie piece of cheesecake or birthday cake, I have it. If I want donuts, we get them.
Yes.
There is no restrictions on what we will eat or what we can eat, which is surprising because you're going to have those friends that go, oh, I know you're on a diet. Can you eat this? I'm not on a diet. I've changed my lifestyle and my food management is different. And so now I can eat whatever I want. It's a matter of whether or not I have it built into my macros and I have my macros to support that. If not, then I may eat it tonight and go way over my macros, but I'm going to pay for it over the next 3 days by reducing my calories so that I average out to being within macro range for the entire week.
But I mean, we're always here. If you guys can always DM us, I am, you know, us questions anytime. And if we can answer them, we will. Otherwise, we'll just say we're not qualified to answer that.
We're sorry that we took the last 2 weeks off. As you know, I've been recovering from skin removal surgery. Hopefully you've watched the videos. If not, then you're missing out. They're pretty cool. Jen's in the middle of starting her prep. That happened on last week. Yeah. So lots of things going on, but we wanted to make sure that we at least took the time to explain the basics of macros for you.
Yeah.
Have a great day.